During the 2006 Lebanon War, Operation Sharp and Smooth, also known as the Baalbek Operation, was an Israel Defense Forces raid on a hospital in the city of Baalbek, which was being used as a Hezbollah headquarters, and a neighborhood of the city. The precise objectives of the raid remain classified, but it is known that a number of Lebanese, including Hezbollah and armed Lebanese Communist Party members, were killed, and 5 Lebanese civilians were arrested and detained in Israel as suspected Hezbollah members, but released after 3 weeks. The casualty figures for the raid vary. According to inquiries by Human Rights Watch and Lebanese authorities, 16 Lebanese residents, most of them civilians, were killed. According to IDF, 10 Hezbollah militants were killed in the attack. Background: Operation Sharp and Smooth was one of a number of raids carried out by the IDF during the 2006 Lebanon War against Hezbollah-operated medical facilities that the IDF said served primarily as operations bases where guerrillas planned attacks together with Iranian instructors. By August 2, when the Baalbek operation was over, 15 to 20 similar raids had been carried out according to the IDF. Airstrikes on Baalbek, a Hezbollah stronghold, by the Israeli Air Force on July 17 had destroyed petrol stations, Hezbollah officers, a dairy processing plant, and resulted in residents fleeing the town. Those that remained reportedly expected another attack. The operation began between 9:30 and 10:15 p.m. on August 1 with intensive bombardment around the Dar al-Hikmeh hospital to cut off all the access roads. The hospital was one of several medical facilities that the IDF believed may have been used to treat or hold the 2 captured soldiers, Ehud Goldwasser and Eldad Regev, after their abduction by Hezbollah the previous month. Approximately 200 elite commandos fast-roped from helicopters which previously refueled over the Mediterranean Sea. The operation involved 2 commando units, Shaldag of the Israeli Air Force, and Seret Matkal of the IDF branch of intelligence. Air cover was provided by attack helicopters, jet fighters and unmanned drones. At least 10 bombing runs were carried out around the hospital and on hills east and north of Baalbek according to witness reports. Upon landing, the 2 units split up. The Seret Matkal unit proceeded to the Dar al-Hikmeh hospital in the Jamaliyu suburb of Baalbek, known for its connections to Hezbollah and believed by Israeli military intelligence to be a base for Iranian Revolutionary Guards. According to local residents, the Hezbollah-run hospital was financed by an Iranian charity, the Imam Khomeini Charitable Society. The hospital was empty at the time, the patients having been transferred to other hospitals, or sent home 4 days earlier. The Israeli force occupied the hospital. According to HRW, IDF commandos shot and killed a nurse who was trying to flee and wounded 2 armed security guards during the takeover. 2 armed Hezbollah fighters were killed outside the hospital while engaging the Israelis. One by a missile from a drone and the other by small arms fire. Based on Hezbollah martyr posters that later appeared around the village of Al-Jamaliyah, HRW concluded that the nurse and the 2 militants may have been the only Hezbollah-affiliated people killed in the raid. A group of local residents were alarmed by the sound of fighting and assembled at the house of the local Mukhtar. 2 of the men were armed members of the Lebanese Communist Party and a third was an unarmed member of the group. An Israeli helicopter fired a number of missiles at the group, killing all 3 LCP militants as well as 3 unarmed men. According to an assessment by Human Rights Watch, the 2 armed militants were to be considered combatants and therefore legitimate targets. HRW further noted that the 2 combatants endangered the lives of the civilians by mixing with them. The unarmed men killed in the attack were faulted for mixing with combatants during an Israeli military operation. HRW thus considered them to be collateral casualties to a legitimate Israeli military strike. At approximately 3:30 a.m. on the 2nd of August, an Israeli Apache helicopter fired a missile at a Syrian Kurdish seasonal agricultural worker and his family, one of 5 families of farmers who'd been sheltering in their tents since the raid began. When the family left their tent and ran for shelter at a Lebanese house nearby, the father Talal Chibli, his wife Mahasha Ban and their children Mahanad, Muayyad, Asma, and Mohammed were killed or died later of their wounds. 3 of the family's children, Muthana, Muse Ab, and Bachel, were seriously wounded but survived. According to HRW, the family had no links to Hezbollah and were not participating in the hostilities. The 2nd Israeli unit swept through the Al-Uzera neighborhood of Baalbek, some 5 kilometers from the hospital. Apparently they were looking for persons related to Hassan Nasrallah, the General Secretary of Hezbollah. The Israeli soldiers entered a house in the neighborhood and asked a shopkeeper if he was Hassan Nasrallah, which was his name. Although he was unrelated to the Hezbollah leader, Nasrallah, his 14-year-old son and 5 other civilians were kidnapped. The prisoners were allegedly beaten and threatened by IDF soldiers. The soldiers threatened to kill 14-year-old Mohammed Nasrallah together with his father unless he told them who was in the resistance. The boy was released, but the 5 adults were brought to Israel. The prisoners, 2 of whom were seniors, were detained for 4 days and nights inside a bus. An Israeli reserve soldier serving in the military police complained about the procedure, calling it hard to describe it as humanitarian treatment. The reluctance of the IDF to open a formal prisoner of war facility contravened army regulations. Around 20 Lebanese prisoners were detained there, most of whom were released after questioning. The commandos were on the ground for about 4.5 hours from 10:30 p.m. until 3 a.m. Immediately after the raid, the IDF said 10 terrorists had been killed, all of them armed and wearing bulletproof vests, and 5 Hezbollah members had been kidnapped during a precise surgical raid that resulted in no IDF or civilian casualties. The operation was publicly applauded by Military Chief of Staff Lt. Gen. Dan Halalutz. Hezbollah said that the 5 people captured by Israel were civilians and not members of Hezbollah. The captives, initially described by the IDF as known Hezbollah gunmen, were later identified as civilians and released after 3 weeks. According to Human Rights Watch and Lebanese authorities, most of the fatalities were civilians. The 5 prisoners who had been captured in the raid and taken to Israel were subjected to repeated interrogations about their relationship to Hezbollah and its leader. On August 16, they were finally allowed to see a lawyer who brought a petition to the Israeli Supreme Court to obtain their release. Instead of answering the petition, the IDF released the 5 to UNIFIL 3 weeks after being abducted. "We captured 5 people we thought were involved with Hezbollah," explained an Israeli official to New York Times. "Under questioning it turned out we were wrong, so we turned them over to the UN." Haaretz wrote that the release of the captives again raises questions about the real value of the operations of the special units. The IDF and the government had been quick to announce significant achievements immediately after the operations. According to the investigation by Human Rights Watch, 16 Lebanese residents were killed in the raid, of whom 4 were deemed combatants and a further 2 civilian members of Hezbollah or the Communist Party. An official report by the Lebanese Interior Security Forces confirmed these numbers, although the names do not fully match those supplied by HRW. 2 of the victims were identified as belonging to Hezbollah, but the Communist Party members were not mentioned in the report. The report also contained the names of the 14 Lebanese wounded in the fighting. The precise objective of the operation is unknown. The Jerusalem Post suggested at the time of the raid that the IDF may have believed that the two kidnapped soldiers, Ehud Goldwasser and Eldad Regev, were being held in bunkers below the hospital, but that the raid appeared to have been about collecting intelligence. Lebanese sources claimed that the target of the raid was Mohammed Yazbek, a well-known Hezbollah leader living in the area who had been accused by Israel of involvement in the capture of IDF Colonel Elhanan Tannenbaum in 2000. Yazbek, however, escaped unhurt. A spokesman for the IDF denied that the operation had a specific target. Chief of Staff Lt. Gen. Dan Halutz claimed that the main goal was to deliver a message to Hezbollah that the IDF can operate deep inside Lebanon and wherever else we want to. According to Amy Pedazur, professor of government and Middle Eastern studies at the University of Texas at Austin, the raid was an unsuccessful attempt to kidnap Hezbollah activists for bargaining purposes. According to an account published in Maariv a month after the war, the IDF had learnt beforehand that the intended target of the operation would not be in place. The IDF, however, decided to go ahead with it for propaganda purposes. The aim had been to obtain information about the fate of the abducted soldiers, but in fact none was obtained. In spite of this, it was marketed as a success story. The report was denied by the IDF. Assessments. Stratfor concluded in an analysis of the raid that Israel took large risks and allotted huge military resources in carrying out the raid, well in excess of its achievements. Former Chief of Staff Moshe Yaalon, a sharp critic of IDF conduct during the Lebanon War, questioned whether the raid was justified in terms of risk, cost and benefit, and whether it was not simply an adventure. HRW concluded that the operation appears to have been based on questionable intelligence and had a disproportionate impact on civilians. Hezbollah leader Nasrallah mocked the raid during a speech on Al-Mana TV in which he said, "They stormed a hospital and threw a grenade to search for injured fighters who they didn't capture. They kidnapped 5 civilians and they are hostages. This is intelligence. This is the Mossad." According to Ofer Shalak and Yoav Limor, the operation had a psychological influence on Hezbollah leadership as the attack was in the heart of their stronghold. The local commander of Bekaa area was dismissed, movement on the roads was minimized, and more energy was put on self-defense. Fatalities. Group of men killed by Hellfire missiles fired from helicopter or drone. Maxim Ali Jamal al-Din, 18. Awad Jamal al-Din, 58. Hassan Jamal al-Din, 18. Naji Jamal al-Din, 45. Muhammad Naji Jamal al-Din, 12. Malik Jamal al-Din, 22. Hussein Yusuf al-Mekdad, 42. Men killed in or around Dar al-Hikmeh Hospital. Atif Amhaz. Wissam Ahmad Yagi. Syrian Kurdish family killed by Hellfire missile strike. Talal Chibli, 40. Mahar al-Issa Sharaban, 35. Mahanad Talal Chibli, 14. Muayyad Talal Chibli, 12. Asma Talal Chibli. Muhammad Talal Chibli. Civilians detained and brought to Israel. Hassan Deeb Nasrallah, 60. Bilal Nasrallah, 32. Ahmad Saleh al-Autad, 55. Hassan al-Burja, 40. Muhammad Shuk, unknown age.